This is Curious Minnesota, a Star Tribune project that sends staff from the state's largest newsroom hunting for the answers to great questions we receive from you, our readers. We're here to answer everything you want to know about the state's people, places, and culture.
Welcome to Curious Minnesota. I'm your host, Erica Pearson. This episode of Curious Minnesota is sponsored by Primrose Schools and the Minnesota Historical Society. Today's show is about the Iron Range town of Kinney and the gutsy publicity stunt that its leaders pulled off in 1977. That's when Kinney announced to the world that it had seceded from the United States. No, they couldn't really do this, but their pronouncement was to make a point. The state and federal governments weren't providing needed funds to fix their water system. So Kinney's leaders came up with an idea. What about asking for aid as a foreign country instead? They even printed up passports and compared themselves to Monaco. This question came to us during Duluth and St. Louis County days at the Capitol. I'm here today with my colleague, Christa Lawler. Christa, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Hi. Oh, I'm so happy to be here.
So first of all, tell us a little bit about what you do for the Minnesota Star Tribune.
Okay, so I'm based in Duluth, and I've been here since the start of 2022, just covering things that happen in this area, out as far as the Iron Range, up the North Shore a little bit, and here in Duluth.
Awesome, and you do a great job. You've done a great job with lots of curious questions for us, so I love that.
It's my favorite.
Aw. So what was it about Kinney's story that made you want to delve into it for Curious?
Okay, so I was at Duluth Lake Superior Days at the Capitol, and I ran into a woman I've known for years, Mary Tennis, who runs the depot here. She's the executive director, and she's like a very history-minded person, and she's just like full of enthusiasm. And I saw her, and she was like, oh my gosh, the funniest thing just happened. She told me this story about how she had literally just learned about the Republic of Kinney, and when she went to tell someone else about it, the woman pulled out her wallet and showed her a Kinney passport. So not only was she familiar with the story, she has a passport that's like kind of beaten up and a little bit spilled upon, but she's been carrying it in her purse for, eons.
That's amazing. It's like fate.
Yeah, it was fate. And so then I found the woman, got to see her passport, hear her story, and it was just kind of like the theme of the entire day.
I love it. So what kind of a place is Kinney?
It is a mining town that was built, at the early part of the last century. And at this point, it only has about 140 people who live there. All of the significant landmarks have closed. When I talked to the mayor, I was like, where do people hang out? And he said, my garage. So the library had closed and there's not much going on there right now.
So how did its chapter as the Republic of Kinney first begin? The town was in a tough situation, right?
Right. It was in the 1970s, and Kinney needed a whole new water system. It hadn't been built to last the decades that it had been in use, and things like water pressure was really low, so the fire department had a hard time even just, putting out fires because you couldn't get enough water pressure. So they needed $186,000 to fix its water system. And they weren't getting the money they needed from the government. So at that point, the hangout was called Mary's Bar. It was run by this really fascinating woman named Mary Anderson, who is kind of beloved in these parts and also not afraid of a little bit of like attention. So she had quite a few jobs. She was a nurse. She was a mom. She was a bartender and bar owner. And she was the mayor. People were sitting around her bar, and no one's really sure exactly who said it, but they said, we'd have a better chance of getting foreign aid. And so they hatched a plan to secede from the United States, declare war, quickly lose, and then secure foreign aid. So it was kind of a quiet idea for a while until a reporter from one of the small local newspapers was sitting at the bar one night and heard the story. And when she wrote it, it started to get some traction. So people started hearing about it in Minnesota, and pretty soon it was international news that this small town in northern Minnesota was going to secede from the United States. And it became kind of a fun little joke and something that people referenced often.
Mm-hmm. And in making their declaration, they wrote a letter to the U.S. Secretary of State, Cyrus Vance, and that ended up getting quoted in so many articles and TV spots. I'm wondering if you could read a little bit of it for us, because it shows the character and the sense of humor behind this move.
For sure. So the letter to Vance said, "Be it resolved that the City Council of the City of Kinney in Kinney, Minnesota, has decided to secede from the United States of America and become a foreign country. Our area is large enough for it. We are 12 square blocks, 3 blocks wide and 4 blocks long. We will be similar to Monaco. It is much easier to get assistance as a foreign country, which we need badly, and there is no paperwork to worry about. If necessary, we will be glad to declare war and lose. However, if this is a requirement, we will appreciate being able to surrender real quick, as our mayor works as a nurse in a hospital, and most of our council members work at a nearby mine and cannot get much time off of work."
I love it. We appreciate being able to surrender real quick.
Real quick. Real quick, like. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. And so this story landed on the NBC Evening News, right?
Right. It was everywhere. All these people talking about this town seceding. And even years later, I read quite a few newspaper stories about this. And I mean, this went on for years, and people could not reference Kinney without, putting in parentheses that this is the town that seceded from the United States, or tried to. So it lasted a long time.
Got it. And what else did you find when you were going through these old newspaper clippings about Kinney's bid?
Oh my gosh. Oh, one of my favorite things is Gino Paolucci, who is a Duluth businessman. He heard about what was going on there, and he decided to donate a police car to them. So the police car that he gave them has the crest of Kinney on the side of it. And then along with that, he's kind of known for like pizza rolls and that kind of thing. He donated like 10 pizzas to the town also. So people were really like kind of glomming onto this and having fun with it.
Got it. And I noticed that they called this foreign aid.
Foreign aid, yes. Yes, for sure.
Okay, so we still need to get to whether or not this brought some real change for Kinney. So let's get into that after the break.
At Primrose, our balanced learning approach means exploring academic skills and life skills, combining purposeful play with nurturing guidance from teachers, and setting children up for success in future classrooms. Learn more at primroseschools.com/Twin Cities.
History doesn't only exist in the pages of a book. History exists all around us. You just have to dare to look. Listen to Minnesota Unraveled, a podcast from the Minnesota Historical Society. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Okay, we're back. Okay, so I'm curious to hear about not only the foreign aid that they got from this businessman, but whether or not the federal government started taking notice or what happened with the water system.
Okay, so they did ultimately get money for the water system, but some of the fun things that happened along the way were they kind of did some of their own fundraising. And at the bar, they started selling passports. And those passports were for Kinney. They had all the funny, like, little Kinneyisms on it. Their town motto is filed in triplicate, and that was written on there. And so they handed out these passports for like $1 or no more than $3. You could buy them at Mary's Bar, and later you could buy them at the bar that ended up replacing Mary's Bar. Anyway, this went on for years, where you could kind of flash your Kinney passport. And this is where Jamie, the woman I met at the St. Louis County and Duluth days, this is what she had. And she went there specifically to get a Kinney passport. She said she didn't even have a drink at the bar. She just went in and bought a passport and then like took a photo in front of the library and then left. And she's from the Iron Range. So it wasn't a long drive for her by any means, but it was a definite trip that she made there, a pilgrimage, if you will.
Yeah, that's so cool. And filed in triplicate, it's like a joke, poking fun at the bureaucracy that they've been dealing with, right?
Right. For sure.
Got it. Okay, so can you still get passports today, or is it something we missed out on?
I think we missed out on it because there are no more bars in Kinney. There's, like I said before, there's very little in Kinney. And in fact, when I was talking to the mayor, I was like, do people still flash this as like a sign of, like solidarity or anything. And he's like, I don't even know where they would flash it. So at this point, it's probably just withering away in people's wallets. But they do, I think they also had T-shirts or buttons, and they ended up raising about $2,000 with merch sales.
And that's in 1970s money too. So
right. So $1 zillion in today's cash. Yeah.
That's cool. So what else did the mayor tell you? What does he think about this chapter in his town's history?
Most of the people I talked to kind of found it like a metaphor for Iron Range perseverance, for the kind of humor that's found in this region that goes through a lot, like regularly cycles through a lot of ups and downs, and mining and not mining. And this is just kind of a show of their humor, but also their, ingenuity.
Yeah, and it did work.
And it did work, yes. I think the most fascinating thing is Mary Anderson, who I think on one of the anniversaries, it might have been like 50 years since they succeeded, they had a huge parade, and she served as the marshal of the parade. And she's no longer alive, but everyone you talk to about her is just, she's just synonymous with this city. She was a DFLer, and she was really tied into politics. So when you would have politicians come through this area of the Iron Range, they would always stop at Mary's Bar. And Rudy Perpich, in fact, had his own Kinney passport that she had sent him with some potitza, I think, the pastry, the Iron Range pastry that people like. I think that's what it was. It was
I think
some Iron Range specific pastry.
Yeah. Did you get any interesting feedback from readers after this Curious Minnesota story came out? I did notice that some commenters who are not fans of the Trump administration suggested that the whole state of Minnesota should think about succeeding.
Of the comments that I was finding out there, it was all very aligned with what you're saying, with people suggesting that it happen again. And it kind of was a timely story in that way, that people could kind of say, like, maybe we should do this again, or look at those fools.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. And it was a popular story on our website that day. And I think that it's because it sort of strikes a nerve of feeling like, oh, my government and I are not
right. And what
the
can
same.
I do?
Yeah.
For sure. And what can I do as just this member of a town with, 300 people in it in this northern Minnesota, which doesn't always get a ton of attention.
Yeah. Do you think that this could happen today?
Gosh, the news cycle is so fast, right? Like, I don't know that people would glom on. I think they might like it for 15 minutes. I don't think it would take hold like it did in the 70s, where people are, this is what they know about Kinney. And so every time they talk about Kinney, they're going to mention this. I don't know if it would have the same impact. It's really it's a period piece.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that's true. A lot of times with Curious Minnesota, we will find these little like times when the whole country and even, around the world, suddenly everyone was focused on a tiny place in Minnesota. So this is a great one. This is a great one. Thank you so much, Christa. That is it for today's show. It's great having you here.
It was fun to be here.
You can read all of our Curious Minnesota stories online at startribune.com/curious. And thanks, as always, to Matt Gilmer for editing this podcast. If you have some feedback or a question you'd like us to answer, you can send a note to curious@startribune.com.
Thanks for listening to Curious Minnesota. We want to hear from you. Ask questions and read more stories online at startribune.com/curious. Our show is recorded at the Star Tribune's headquarters in beautiful downtown Minneapolis, and our music is produced by Matt Gilmer. If you like the show, please rate us on iTunes or leave a review. And until next time, stay curious.